Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes life places us in situations where we must weigh our capacity for forgiveness against the reality of our own well-being. Relationships are the crucible in which we test the strength of our values and the clarity of our vision. But when it becomes evident that the dynamic is more destructive than redemptive, it's time to confront the uncomfortable truth. And make no mistake, this is not a call to abandon people carelessly, but to recognize when the hope of transformation is no longer tethered to reality. If someone shows you repeatedly a pattern of disrespect, take that seriously. Disrespect isn't just in words, it's in actions, in omissions, and in the way your dignity is disregarded. No apology or fleeting act of kindness can outweigh a pattern that erodes your sense of self-worth. What about accountability? It's a cornerstone of human maturity. A man who cannot own his mistakes is a man who fears the light of truth. He will deflect, justify, and blame, leaving you to shoulder burdens that are not yours. Without accountability, there can be no growth, neither his nor yours. Promises are sacred things. They are commitments we make, not just to others, but to ourselves. And when they are broken time and again, they leave behind a residue of disappointment. If you find yourself navigating a sea of empty promises, don't ignore the storm brewing on the horizon. Manipulation is the weapon of those unwilling to confront their own inadequacies. It's subtle, insidious, and corrosive. If you feel that your emotions are being used as tools to excuse bad behavior or to bind you to unhealthy patterns, that's not love, that's control. And control is the antithesis of a genuine partnership. Relationships are supposed to be fertile ground for mutual growth. If you look at this man and realize that neither of you are better for the time spent together, then you must ask yourself why you remain. Growth doesn't always mean dramatic leaps sometimes. It's in the quiet improvement of character. But when the relationship is stagnant or worse, pulling you backwards, it's a clear signal that you're investing in futility. Respect for boundaries isn't optional, it's foundational. A man who ignores your boundaries doesn't respect your autonomy, your choices, or your humanity. Boundaries are not walls to keep people out. They are invitations for others to show they can meet you where you are, as you are. And finally, ask yourself about values and goals. Do you align on what truly matters? The big things, the small things, the way you view the world, are they harmonious or at odds? If the foundation is fractured, no amount of effort will stop the eventual collapse. The strength to walk away isn't born of anger or resentment. It's born of a deep respect for yourself and a recognition that your time, energy, and heart are too valuable to be squandered. It's not about judging another as unworthy, it's about honoring your own worth enough to demand reciprocity. Life is too short and too precious to live it tied to someone who refuses to rise with you. Repetitive patterns of disrespect are a signal that speaks louder than any apology or fleeting act of kindness. Disrespect doesn't always come in grand, overt gestures. Often it creeps in through subtle actions, omissions, and the way someone treats you when they think no one is watching. It manifests in dismissive tones, in disregarding your opinions or feelings, and in consistently prioritizing their needs over yours. It shows up in the lack of consideration for your time, your boundaries, and your worth as a person. The key here is the repetition. Everyone makes mistakes, and even the best of us can be thoughtless or inconsiderate in the heat of the moment. But when disrespect becomes a recurring theme, it points to something deeper, a lack of value placed on you and your contributions to the relationship. It becomes a pattern that undermines your sense of security and trust, eroding the foundation upon which any meaningful connection must stand. Think of respect as a form of acknowledgement, a way of saying, I see you and I value what you bring to the table. When that acknowledgement is absent, it creates an imbalance where one person's needs or desires take precedence, leaving the other feeling invisible or insignificant. Over time, this can lead to feelings of resentment, self-doubt, and emotional fatigue. It's not just about what is said or done in the moment, it's about the cumulative effect of being treated as though your voice doesn't matter or your presence isn't cherished. The worst part of repetitive disrespect is the toll it takes on your sense of self-worth. When someone continually disregards your feelings or boundaries, it can make you question whether you're asking for too much or whether you deserve better. This is how cycles of unhealthy relationships persist, through the erosion of confidence and the subtle internalization of blame. But the truth is, respect is not a luxury, it is a fundamental part of any healthy relationship. It is the bare minimum, not a bonus feature. Repetition in this context becomes the loudest form of communication. It says, this is who I am, and this is how I treat you, no matter how convincing their apologies or how sincere their promises to change may seem. The consistency of their actions reveals their true priorities. Over time, patterns tell you more about a person than their words ever could. A refusal to take responsibility for mistakes reveals more than just a momentary lapse in judgment. It's a window into a person's inability to confront themselves and their actions honestly. Accountability is the cornerstone of growth, and without it, there can be no genuine change. When someone consistently shifts blame, makes excuses, or minimizes their role in conflicts or problems, it shows an unwillingness to engage with the truth. It's easier to deflect than to face the discomfort of admitting fault, but that avoidance comes at the cost of trust and progress. Taking responsibility isn't just about saying, "I'm sorry," it's about acknowledging the impact of one's actions and actively working to make amends. It's recognizing that words alone don't fix damage, effort and consistency do. When a person refuses to hold themselves accountable, they leave the burden of repair on others, forcing you to carry the emotional weight of their mistakes. Over time, this imbalance fosters resentment and creates an environment where problems go unresolved, leading to a cycle of frustration and disconnection. Lack of accountability also signals a deeper resistance to self-reflection. Growth requires looking inward, examining one's flaws, and being willing to address them. If someone can't or won't do this, they remain stuck in their patterns, repeating the same behaviors that cause harm. It's not a matter of whether they can change, it's about whether they're willing to take the steps necessary to do so. Without accountability, any promises of improvement remain hollow, a superficial attempt to smooth things over rather than a genuine commitment to becoming better. Empty promises are more than just disappointing, they are a betrayal of trust and a signal of unreliability. Promises at their core are commitments, a bridge between intention and action. When someone repeatedly makes promises they fail to keep, it erodes the foundation of the relationship. These broken commitments can range from small, seemingly insignificant gestures to larger, more impactful agreements. Regardless of their scale, the consistent failure to follow through sends a clear message: their words cannot be relied upon. What makes empty promises particularly damaging is the hope they create. Each promise, whether spoken in a moment of sincerity or as a convenient escape from accountability, raises expectations. When those promises are not fulfilled, the hope they inspired turns into disappointment, often accompanied by frustration and hurt. Over time, this pattern chips away at your ability to trust what they say, leaving you questioning not only their words but also their intentions. This behavior also reflects a lack of respect for the emotional impact their actions or inactions have on you. When someone doesn't take their commitments seriously, they fail to consider how their unreliability affects your sense of security and stability. It creates a dynamic where you are left constantly adjusting your expectations, managing your emotions, and wondering whether their next promise will be any different from the last. Empty promises also highlight a gap between intention and effort. Even if the promises were made with genuine intent, without the effort to back them up, they remain meaningless. Change and reliability require action, not just words. A person who continually fails to follow through demonstrates either a lack of discipline, a lack of care, or both. In either case, it leaves you in a position where you cannot depend on them, which undermines the very essence of partnership. Ultimately, a pattern of empty promises signals that their words hold little weight. It's not just the promises themselves, but the repeated cycle of hope, disappointment, and doubt that wears down trust and emotional resilience. Manipulative behavior is a subtle yet deeply harmful force that distorts the dynamics of a relationship. It often begins innocuously, cloaked in concern or affection, but over time, its true nature emerges. When someone uses guilt, fear, or emotional pressure to influence your decisions or control your actions, it is a clear sign that their intentions are self-serving rather than rooted in genuine care or respect. Manipulation is not a mistake or a momentary lapse in judgment. It's a calculated strategy to avoid accountability or to maintain power. This behavior is particularly insidious because it often plays on your emotions and values. A manipulative person might twist your words, distort situations, or make you feel responsible for their feelings or actions. They may use phrases like, "If you really cared about me, you would," or "You're making me feel this way," to shift blame onto you. By doing so, they not only evade accountability, but also make you question your own perspective, creating confusion and self-doubt. Over time, manipulation undermines your ability to trust yourself. You may find yourself second-guessing your instincts or feeling guilty for asserting your boundaries. This erosion of self-confidence is precisely what manipulators rely on to maintain control. The more you doubt yourself, the easier it becomes for them to steer the relationship in their favor, often at the expense of your emotional well-being. Another hallmark of manipulation is the way it often escalates. What might start as subtle guilt-tripping or flattery can evolve into more overt forms of control, such as isolating you from friends or family, monitoring your actions, or dictating your choices. The longer this behavior goes unchecked, the more entrenched it becomes, making it increasingly difficult to recognize and break free from its grip. Manipulation is not a sign of love or care, it's a sign of insecurity and a need for control. Healthy relationships are built on mutual respect, trust, and the freedom to be oneself. When manipulation enters the equation, it poisons these essential elements, replacing them with a dynamic that serves only one person's needs. Recognizing this behavior for what it is, a deliberate attempt to control, is the first step toward reclaiming your autonomy and setting boundaries that protect your sense of self. Relationships should be a space where both individuals can grow, thrive, and support each other in becoming the best versions of themselves. When this mutual growth is absent, it's a sign that the relationship is no longer serving its intended purpose. Instead of fostering progress, it may become stagnant or even detrimental to your well-being, leaving you drained, unfulfilled, and questioning your path forward. The absence of mutual growth often reveals itself in subtle but telling ways. You may find that conversations lack depth, that your interests or ambitions are met with indifference, or that there is little effort to understand or support your goals. In some cases, you might even feel held back, as if the relationship has become an anchor rather than a sail. This dynamic can lead to frustration and resentment, especially when it feels like you are putting in the effort to evolve while the other person remains static or disinterested. Growth is not just about grand achievements or dramatic transformations. It's about the small, meaningful steps that move you toward a better understanding of yourself and the world. In a healthy relationship, this growth is shared. Both partners inspire and challenge each other, creating a dynamic that encourages personal and collective development. When this is missing, the relationship becomes one-sided, with one person shouldering the emotional labor while the other resists change or contribution. What's particularly harmful about a relationship devoid of growth is the way it can distort your perspective on what you deserve. Over time, you might convince yourself that this stagnation is normal or that your own aspirations should take a back seat to maintain peace. But this mindset only perpetuates the cycle, leaving you feeling unfulfilled and disconnected from your true self. The absence of growth also signals a lack of investment in the relationship's future. If one person shows no desire to evolve or engage meaningfully, it raises the question of whether they truly value the partnership. Growth requires effort, vulnerability, and a willingness to adapt, all of which are essential for a relationship to flourish. Without these elements, the connection remains superficial, failing to provide the depth and support needed for a fulfilling and lasting bond. Disregard for boundaries is a serious indication of a lack of respect for your individuality and autonomy. Boundaries are not barriers meant to keep others out. They are frameworks that define how you expect to be treated and what you are willing to accept in a relationship. When someone repeatedly ignores or dismisses these boundaries, it's a clear sign that they prioritize their own needs and desires over your well-being. Boundaries are essential for maintaining a healthy dynamic in any relationship. They protect your sense of self, ensuring that your values, emotions, and personal space are honored. When someone disregards these limits, they undermine the trust and mutual respect that form the foundation of a meaningful connection. This behavior often begins subtly with small intrusions or dismissals, but over time it can escalate into a pattern that leaves you feeling powerless or unheard. The problem with boundary violations is that they create a cycle of emotional erosion. Each time your boundaries are crossed, it chips away at your confidence to assert yourself and your ability to trust that the other person will respect your needs. You may find yourself justifying their behavior or questioning whether your boundaries are reasonable. This self-doubt can lead to a dangerous dynamic where their disregard becomes normalized and your sense of self-worth diminishes. Ignoring boundaries also reveals a deeper issue, a lack of empathy and consideration for your feelings. Someone who values you as an equal partner will take the time to understand and honor your limits, even if they don't fully agree with them. Disregarding boundaries, on the other hand, shows a fundamental unwillingness to compromise or prioritize your comfort. It suggests that their desires outweigh your right to feel safe and respected within the relationship. This behavior is not only harmful but also unsustainable. A relationship where boundaries are consistently ignored creates an environment of tension and mistrust. Without boundaries, there can be no healthy give and take, only an imbalance that leaves one person feeling drained and the other unchecked in their behavior. Recognizing this pattern is crucial for reclaiming your autonomy and ensuring that your voice is heard and respected. Misaligned values and goals in a relationship are more than just differences in opinion. They're foundational conflicts that can undermine the connection over time. Values represent what you hold as fundamentally important, guiding your decisions, behaviors, and vision for life. Goals, on the other hand, reflect the direction in which you want to grow and evolve. When these core aspects are misaligned between two people, it creates a disconnect that is often difficult to reconcile. The effects of misaligned values often appear gradually. At first, you may be able to overlook differences, dismissing them as minor or situational. But as the relationship progresses, these differences can become sources of tension and misunderstanding. For example, if one person values independence and self-expression while the other prioritizes tradition and conformity, conflicts may arise over how to navigate important decisions. Similarly, if one partner has long-term goals that contradict the others, such as differing views on family, career, or lifestyle, it can lead to feelings of frustration and incompatibility. These misalignments are particularly challenging because they touch on deeply held beliefs and aspirations. Unlike surface-level disagreements, values and goals are not easily compromised without sacrificing a part of yourself. Trying to force compatibility in these areas often leads to resentment and a sense of loss, as one or both individuals feel they must abandon their true desires or principles to maintain the relationship. Now, furthermore, misaligned values and goals can hinder the ability to support each other effectively. A healthy relationship thrives on mutual encouragement and shared purpose. When your partner doesn't share or understand your vision for the future, it becomes difficult to feel fully supported in your journey. This lack of alignment can create a sense of isolation, even within the relationship, as you find yourselves moving in different directions rather than growing together. Recognizing misaligned values and goals is not about assigning blame or labeling one perspective as right or wrong. It's about understanding whether the relationship has the foundation necessary to sustain and nurture both individuals over time. Without alignment in these fundamental areas, even the strongest emotional connection may struggle to withstand the inevitable challenges that life brings. Ending a relationship is never an easy decision, but recognizing the signs that someone is not worth another chance is an act of self-respect and clarity. Relationships thrive on mutual respect, trust, accountability, and shared growth. When these elements are consistently absent, it's a signal to prioritize your well-being over the hope of change that may never come. You deserve a connection that uplifts you, respects your boundaries, and aligns with your values and goals. Walking away doesn't mean you've failed. It means you've chosen to honor your worth and embrace the possibility of a healthier, more fulfilling future. Remember, the courage to let go of what no longer serves you is the first step toward finding the love and life you truly deserve.